Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're coming from. We want to especially welcome you to this event, the Data and Diversity. Today, we'll be looking at the life and the impact of Ida B. Wells. On today's agenda, we'll be looking at, I'll be your host, and I'll be to speak alongside today will be Lee Baker, who is a professor of anthropology and also of African history. We're going to have African American history. And also we're going to have Tableau featured authors like Alice McKnight, Olushola, Eve Thomas, and also Chimdi Nwosu, who will be showing some pieces that they have done, giving us a Viz Spotlight. So you're welcome. Let's have some, who am I? My name is Etido. I'm a data analyst, a project manager also, and also a Tableau Public Ambassador. A fun fact about me, I'm the happiest person in the world. Unapologetic so. I think you can't meet someone more happier than myself. So welcome. All right, a few housekeeping for us to do today to get to know, just in case you would have to drop off earlier in the session before we get to the end. Every part of today's recording will be shared with you. If you have questions for our presenters today, please ensure you drop them on the Q&A function. We'll make sure you get the answers you need. And also feel free to use the chat box to engage and to get to know each other a whole lot more. All right, we'll soon be handing over to Professor Lee Baker. Professor Lee Baker is actually a professor of cultural anthropology, sociology, and African American studies at the Duke University. A few things we need to learn about Professor. I'm going to read a few things about him. He's a professor of cultural anthropology, sociology, and African American studies at Duke University. He received his BS bachelor's from Portland State University and doctorate at the Temple University in anthropology. He's a resident fellow at Harvard. He's a resident fellow at, this one's quite fast. He's a resident fellow at Harvard W.E.B. Du Bois Institute, the Smithsonian National Museum of American History, Johns Hopkins Institute for Global Studies, the University of Ghana Legion, the American Philosophical Society, the National Humanities Center. His books include From Savage to Negro, Anthropology and the Construction of Race, Life in America, Identity and Everyday Experiences, Anthropology and the Racial Politics of Culture. Although he focuses on the history of anthropology, he has published numerous articles on a wide range of subjects from social linguistics to race and democracy. Baker has also distinguished himself by receiving awards such as the Distinguished Teaching Award, African Anthropological Association Award for Distinguished Achievement in Critical Study of North America. From 2008 to 2016, he served as the Duke's Dean of Academic Affairs. A fun fact about Lee Baker is that he believes in learning to do, which is quite synonymous with what we believe in the data community. We learn to do. And also he emphasized on the fact that when you learn to do, you create more knowledge by doing. So join me and welcome Professor Lee D. Baker. Professor, is over to you.
All righty.
Prof, it's over to you. Is Prof there?
Yes, I'm right here. Can you hear me?
Very well.
Okay. Thank you for that introduction. And I appreciate the opportunity to share some of my interest in Ida B. Wells. She is my American hero in a number of different reasons. And she, as you rightfully note, is one of the first and earliest journalists that used evidence-based journalism to sort of make rhetorical points. I mean, she was definitely making rhetorical points, but she used the data from mostly other newspapers. So she was the OG data scraper. She got the information from other newspapers and sort of aggregated them to make the argument that lynching was quite literally un-American and uncivilized. And that was one of her larger contributions. Another big contribution I've identified with Ida B. Wells is that she was the pioneer of nearly every single tactic to inform civil rights. And I'm going to go through those. So those are the sort of the two big takeaways I want this group to have is one, that she was a data-driven journalist, and she was a pioneer of virtually every tactic, the boycott, for example, the Black migration, and we'll go through those. So again, a pleasure. And just to make the introduction a little bit more, I was a resident fellow. I had fellowships at those different places during my over 30-year career. So it wasn't like all the time or whatever, but over my career, I spent time in those institutions. So let me share my screen. I've got a nice little deck here. I hope this works. Okay, did people see Ida B. Wells' picture up front? Okay. So she was an anti-lynching crusader, a suffragist, a journalist, and I would even say she was part of the muckraking tradition. She does not often get put in that tradition with, like those articles or those books that sort of critiqued the cities, critiqued the cattle industry, critiqued corruption in the progressive era. But I think one should put her in that tradition. She was an orator, she pioneered civil rights, and she was an advocate, one of the greatest, strongest advocates for democracy and upholding our ideals. Again, in terms of thinking about pioneers, one of the most important and effective strategies for fighting for civil rights was to say, we have these pillars of democracy, they should stand for all Americans. She was born enslaved in Holly Springs, Mississippi, and she had a very sort of she had a somewhat affluent upbringing. Her mother was sort of a famous cook, and her father was a carpenter, and her father was also part of the Masons, and they were sort of, if someone could be middle class after being enslaved, their family was. They were committed to education. They had she had a number of siblings, and it was a loving, empowering household. However, in 1878, yellow fever struck through Holly Springs and killed a couple of her siblings, but took both her mother and her father. The Masons, he was a Prince Mason, were trying to figure out how to take care of the other children. Ida B. Wells was 16 at the time, and she says, no, let me take care of the family. Do not split this family up, and we will do it together. She ended up teaching school, and she kind of lied about her age but she did what it had to take care of those children. In a few years, though, in 1882, she moves to Memphis to be with her aunt and several of her siblings. But so that's 1882. 2 years later, she starts her first literally fight for justice. And this was, if you recall, she's growing up in Reconstruction. So this is the time when African Americans are being elected. You had civil rights legislation, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, and there was hope. But that hope comes crashing down sort of in the late 1880s and early 1890s, and then it comes completely crashing down in 1896 with the Plessy versus Ferguson decision saying separate but equal. It was never equal, was the law of the land. But in 1884, this is when kind of state by state, they were repealing these civil rights legislation. And that's when there was in Tennessee, a law that says you could not sit in the first class in the train. So the conductor asked Ida B. Wells, so this is, years before Rosa Parks, asked Ida B. Wells to go to the smoking car or the gentleman's car. She was in the first class ladies' car, as it was called. And she had bought her ticket and she said, no, I will not, and refused to leave. So the conductor forcibly removes her from the train and she bites him. And I will quote this, I've got this written. I refused, saying that the forward car, the closest to the locomotive, was a smoker and I was in the ladies' car. I proposed to stay. The conductor tried to drag me out of the seat. But the moment he caught hold of my arm, I fastened my teeth into the back of his hand. They ended up throwing her out after that, you can imagine. And she left on the next, stop. I don't know how she got home. But the story is that it took several men and she was fighting the whole way. So it was literally her first fight. But this was Ida B. Wells, and this is early, and this was transformative for her sort of later fights for justice. She sues the Chesapeake and Ohio Railway, and she wins. It goes all the way up to the state Supreme Court, and it gets overturned. But she won $500 from the Chesapeake and Ohio Railway for damages. And then that gets overturned and overturned. It goes to the state. And unlike Rosa Parks or others, she didn't have the NAACP. She was paying all of this money out of her own pocket, and actually out of that $500 she won, because she kept having to fight this all the way. But this fighting the Chesapeake and Ohio Railway for her right and her liberty, frankly, because she bought that ticket, was her first fight. And this is where I see, one could argue she was a pioneer for civil rights in the courts. And you have Thurgood Marshall down there and Charles Hamilton Houston, who was the dean of the Howard Law School, who both of them really used the courts effectively to end Jim Crow. But Ida B. Wells was doing that in the 1880s. So as part of that, she started writing about her experience in papers. She started writing for different things. And she eventually finds that journalism's her thing. She really enjoys it. She's really into it. And she begins writing. But she also joins this paper, but she didn't want to just be a worker. She said she knew early on that she wanted to be an equity partner. So she had a little savings, but she bought an equity partnership in this newspaper that she edited. You can kind of see that's pretty sophisticated for a woman at that time. So I argue that she was a data-driven muckraker. She also weaponized respectability. She made people feel shameful, because if lynching is, at the time they were calling African Americans sort of barbarians, and that's because they weren't civilized. They didn't have the rights and the responsibilities of voting, et cetera, et cetera. She was like, that's ridiculous. What's not respectable and what's savage is these lynchings. And she because she was writing about this, and she also was writing about the school system, she was very courageous. She did not get her teaching contract renewed. And she was like, okay, I'm just going to be a journalist. And you can see this quote, one of her famous quotes: "The way to right wrongs is to turn the light of truth on them." So just a few years after she started writing for the paper, 3 of her friends were lynched because they were competing with whites in the People's Grocery Store. That was it. There was really no difference. And so when they came to terrorize them and terrorize their store, they shot back. And after that, they were arrested, but a mob came into the jail, took them out, and lynched him. And because they were friends of Ida B. Wells, she went on a tear and wrote about this, and shamed people and say this is not truth. All they did was were being good capitalists, basically. And it was heartbreaking. And then they wrecked the printing press, their publication. And so someone got word to her, thank goodness, because the mob was after her too, after she wrote the scathing criticism of their town, and she stayed in Chicago. So she was in exile for her entire life. She could not come back after she wrote this article about this lynching. But it just then galvanized her mettle, and she just went, really fast forward. I mean, she really focused on, using the power of the pen. So this is what she also wrote: "The city of Memphis has demonstrated that neither character nor standing," I can't read this now because it says, "there is nothing we can do about the lynching now. We are outnumbered and without arms." They couldn't buy the ammunition. She basically says you have to boycott and or leave. And so in some respects, I argue, because she's arguing, just go. And this is in the 1880s, right? She pioneered the Great Migration, which was 6 million African Americans leaving the South and heading north and west. But she was arguing for the people in Memphis just to leave because the city will not protect you. So that's huge. If one could make the argument she was a pioneer for the Great Migration, which I think the evidence suggests she was. She was also a pioneer of the boycott. And boycotts have been used effectively, whether for Latinx workers or African Americans, but she was doing it at the beginning of that. She also was an advocate for armed defense. And she says a Winchester rifle should have a place in every Negro's home because the law refuses to protect it. So one could argue, yes, indeed, she was a pioneer of armed resistance like the Black Panthers. And in 1893, she joins Frederick Douglass in the World's Fair. So she was about propaganda, and she had this pamphlet in many languages that says why the colored people were not being exhibited or allowed to showcase their progress in the 1893's fair. So she was using sort of propaganda as well. And so she pioneered that as well. She, more than anything else, she showed that lynching was industrial terrorism. It was savagery. It was not American, nor was it Christian. She was, again, the original data scraper, and she did this from newspapers, but she also got some firsthand accounts. And what was most importantly is she made a record. And these were some of her books, but this is how she did it. I mean, and so over the years, she would go through these things, and this is a record of people. So, now with Ancestry.com and people doing their genealogy, they can find their relatives who were lynched during these times. So she goes by the so-called reason. I mean, introducing smallpox was a thing, kidnapping, conspiracy, horse stealing, giving information. You can see the conjuring, the ridiculous reasons. No offense at all, alleged rape. And so she documents person, date, year by year. Then she was the only woman, well, one of the 2 women who was the founder of the NAACP. She participated in women's clubs, political organizations. She was a suffragette as well as an orator. One of her most effective things was going on the international circuit, showing that America indeed was not holding up to the pillars of democracy. And she got a lot of leverage using this sort of international speaking circuit. And I know I kind of rushed at the end, but I wanted to make sure we had a little time for questions and answers. And this is me playing around with AI art and Ida B. Wells' image. I just wanted to share some of those.
Thank you very much, Professor Lee.
But at the end of the day, she was a pioneer. She was fearless. She even hyphenated her name. So it's Ida B. Wells Barnett. She got married. You know, she was just so many elements. She was kind of ahead of her time.
Thank you very much, Professor Lee. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A section so we can pick them up for Prof to give us answers to. We have 5 more minutes for questions. Can we put our hands together for Prof? You could send an emoji. That's a good way to do it. All right. I think something I like the most about Ida, from what you've said, Prof, was the courage. She was going to literally lose everything when she left one city to another. I'm sure she couldn't carry her house. She couldn't carry the things she had in the house. She just moved, and then she was very particular about speaking the truth, which is something I think put it open there for everyone to see, and I think it's something we can take back from Ida's story.
Yes,
okay, there is one.
I think
Go ahead.
She would partner with a lot of men like Frederick Douglass and Booker T. Washington, W.E.B. Du Bois, but she would also be so radical and hold them accountable. So she didn't play politics. She was like, yes, Frederick Douglass, we are partners, but you cannot have at that time the colored day. So they set aside a day of the World's Fair for coloreds only or something, like they were going to promote. And Ida B. Wells was like, absolutely, we're trying to boycott this. We're trying to raise the rate. They can't be sold or bought off. And he was like, well, okay, but they did it anyway. Same thing with Booker T. Washington and others. I mean, she went up even against the powerful Black men who were the civil rights leaders. So her courage was on multiple levels.
Interesting.
There's a couple of Q&A questions.
There's a question for you. It says, was she appreciated during her time? Another one says, is there a book or website you recommend for more research? The third one says, did she have difficulty getting her books published? Is there a particular good biography you can recommend? So I don't know if you want to take them all together.
So the biography I recommend is Paula Giddings, who's wrote the sort of one of the most definitive ones. Her own autobiography is interesting. She spends a lot of time talking about, almost bragging that these associations in England keep inviting her over. So it's kind of cute. And there's a number of, I think the history.com, there's quite a few websites out there that are good information. There's also a good PBS documentary that is, I recommend. And was she, okay, so she did not have a hard time publishing her books because she was in the publishing industry. So they weren't, trade press books or anything, but she was connected enough to Black printers that she was able to publish those books and get them out there. That question is, they weren't viewed as credible, even though she was always very specific that she underreported, if anything, because she only reported what was in the print media at the time. But a lot of people, did respect what she was doing. They admired her reach. But again, she was seen almost a little too radical. And even the suffragists, particularly the ones that were always leery of the Southern, the Southern women that they were trying to go. So this one time she was asked to move to the back of the parade and leave the Illinois delegation when she's in Washington, D.C. And she was like, no. So she moves to the back, but then as the parade starts, she moves her way, and then she stands between two of her allies in the Illinois delegation. So she was like, I'm refusing. And so there was a lot of refusal for that. So she was seen definitely sort of as a radical and someone that could not be tamed. She also, as the rumor has it, was seen as angry and not conforming. She did not want to compromise. But you get some of these tropes that follow women of courage today. And so she was kind of a real pioneer of feminist causes as well.
All right, thank you very much, Prof. We really appreciate you for coming, and we really appreciate the insights you've shared about the life of Ida B. Wells. Thank you so much. I'm sure you're going to send most of us reading again and trying to learn a lot more.
Good.
Once again, we appreciate you.
All right, thank you. I will leave now. And good luck, you guys. I really appreciate it. This says a lot about your leadership and your commitment to diversity.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so we're going to go introduce our very next guest who would speak to us. So we're going to be inviting to speak to us one of the Tableau feature, a Tableau author, Alice McKnight. Alice is a senior data analytic consultant at PH Data. She credits her growth and development to her involvement in the Tableau community. After obviously, she cautiously took her step when she was coming in at first. Yeah, but quickly she found out that this was home, really, and she embraced all the values, the people, and everything, and that has really made her growth phenomenal. Her favorite part of being an ambassador is her personal connections, which she makes with people to both help them improve their skill and also to improve her own skill as well. Some fun facts about Alice is that aside spending time with her husband and toddler, she's very interested in sipping craft beers. She attends live music events and explores new restaurants. So if you're looking for a restaurant around Alice area, I think she's one person to go out there for. All right, you're welcome. Over to you, Alice. Do you want to share a slide or should we take it off together?
I'm going to share my screen and walk through my Viz.
All right, that's cool. So let's go.
Okay, so just a moment. Okay, my Viz should be showing. Let me know if you can see it.
Yeah, we can.
All right. Okay, first, thank you, Tableau, for allowing me the opportunity to talk about my Viz and talk about a little bit about the process. I, of course, since I'm an ambassador, love to create in Tableau, and this particular Viz was one of my first opportunities to prepare data myself, pick a topic that was personal to things that I was interested in. And I just want to thank so many people in the community, especially the leaders of the several community initiatives that provide an avenue for us who are learning, who are pulling our skills together, to share those skills and give us opportunities to create these works outside of your traditional workplace. The reason why, I just want to start with the reason why I created this Viz. I am from Georgia, and if you were around in Georgia in around 2020 with the election, you know that you could not go anywhere without getting a phone call, television, mail around the this particular election. At the time, we had 2 Senate seats that were open. So there was a lot of national attention, a lot of state attention being put on those seats. And from the actual election in 2020, the races were so close that both went to runoffs in December of that following year. So after that election was over, that led to the election of Raphael Warnock, who became the first Black senator from the state of Georgia to be elected. And as I was reflecting, on that achievement, it just got me thinking about how did Black representation in Congress look over time, how that changed, how did it grow? And during this time, I was about a year into my Tableau learning journey. I was participating in several Tableau community initiatives, Makeover Monday, Real World Effect Data, and at this time, a community initiative called Viz to Educate had a challenge on history that they collaborated also with another Tableau community initiative, Iron Quest, to focus on creating vizes around any aspect of history. So I thought that this gave me a really good opportunity to actually stretch myself, work with data that I collected myself, not data that was created by a community challenge, and also get to showcase something that I was passionate about. What I wanted to really accomplish with this viz was to, one, do a really high level view of, what Black representation in Congress looked like from the first time a Black American was elected to Congress up into that current period of time. That case was 2020. I really wanted to be able for users to take a look at the viz, see that high level look easily, get high level information quickly. And if they wanted to, dig into their particular state, they also could. And to also not only see how that growth had changed, but to see how women and men were, the distribution between men and women, how the political affiliations of these individuals changed and grew, and also how which states had more representation than others. Scroll down just a little bit. I decided to use a symbol map basically for this viz. From left to right begins with the 41st Congress, which has the first individuals who were elected to Congress. And we move by year all the way to, at this time, the 117th Congress. And as you can easily see, the growth has happened over those years. I decided to use just simple shapes to represent both men and women. The men are the squares and the women are triangles. And also be able to represent which House of Congress, which Chamber of Congress each of those members represented, with the solid colors being the House of Representatives and the open color outlined shapes being the senators. Making this viz, I learned just a lot. One of the things that I found interesting that stood out was that how in those early years of Black representation, how you can easily see how the party affiliation of most of the Black members changed over time. In the beginning, most of the members who were elected to Congress were in the Republican Party. And as you can see, as you move from left to right, how that party affiliation changed to Democratic overwhelmingly over time. You can definitely see where the change in the ideology of both political parties changed in time. One of the things that I learned early on in my process of creating a business in general is how much there's not a business that you create that doesn't, that you won't look back later and want to update. And one of the things that when I look at this and wanted to update is that there was a period of time after the dissolution of Reconstruction where there was no representation of Black Americans in Congress, as Jim Crow and laws that prohibited Black Americans from voting and being able to run for Congress became prevalent after Reconstruction ended. There was a period of about 28 years where there was no representation in Congress by Black Americans. And this piece sits right in here. And what I would change about this is, and I am in the process of updating this, is including that gap. I think that gap is really important. And I really feel that that's like one thing in this Viz that I would love to update. One of the final things about this Viz that I want to bring up is that this was one of my first visits that I had, prepped the data myself, did the research on myself, and just the process of learning so much while you're actually building. There's so much growth that you can have from not only participating in these community visits, but also prepping your data yourself. At this time, I had not been doing data prep myself, and you definitely learn from all the copying and pasting and cleaning up your data, how important that data prep is to a successful data visualization. So this whole process, I learned so much, and that I have carried on into my work today. Prior to when I was making this Viz, I was a microbiologist and a public health scientist, and I was learning Tableau on the side. Participating in these community initiatives were just really great practice and helped build my passion for data. And now I am a data analyst where I create Tableau solutions as part of my job. And I've gained so much by creating these visits, particularly these visits that I'm passionate about.
Thank you very much, Alice. I think we really enjoyed listening to you. I see the claps already coming, so enjoy them, enjoy the moment. I think something that you said that struck me, Alice, was the fact that you said this was the first Viz where you had to prep the data yourself. And there's something that also resonates with what the community keeps talking about. For people who are trying to grow their skills around data, look for data sets that you are very interested in. I think it brings out the best in you. And I think it's something that you also highlighted. And once you start a process from the beginning to the very end, it just naturally just improves your skill and your understanding around data and how to unlock insights. Thank you once again, Alice.
Hey, thank you for your time. Thank you, everybody.
All right, to take us further, we're going to invite another public author. We're going to invite another public author, Olusola Olojo. Olushola, are you ready?
Yeah, nice one. Hi, I actually got a presentation I can share very quickly, if that's okay.
Okay, so we go with that way.
Yeah, and
but can I ask you a few questions, Olushola?
Absolutely.
Before we get started?
Absolutely.
I'm trying to stop my share and can I just stop?
Yeah, huh? Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, I think I'm trying to stop my share, but it's beginning to share more than what I want. Okay, So, Olusola, I just want to ask you a few questions. What inspired this particular Viz? Would you want to talk to us about it? And first and foremost, let's get to meet you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so my name is Olusola Lojo. I was born in Nigeria, but I currently reside in the UK. I currently work as an insights manager for the Samsung DA field team. I know it sounds way cooler than it is. In a nutshell, my job essentially is to capture sales data on Samsung digital appliances. I then try to identify any opportunities in that data and then communicate that information back over to the business so they can then form like effective business strategy. So that's essentially what pays the bills for me. So I've been working with Tableau for about 3 years, like formally in the data space for about 5 years, but it was really right in the heart of the pandemic around 2020 when I really started to sort of immerse myself on this journey to try to get better at Tableau. So in that journey, I actually met Eve Thomas, who's also on this call, and she steered me in the direction of the Tableau community and data fam. And to say, you know, that experience and that introduction has been life-changing would be an understatement, you know. So thank you so much for that, Eve. I, you know, fully threw myself into the community. You know, I read blogs, you know, took part in like the weekly data challenges, attended seminars, and it was just a wonderful experience. And it really sort of catapulted me into this journey into data. And I was fortunate enough to have been nominated a Tableau public featured author, a Tableau ambassador, and more recently a member of the community equity task force as well, you know. So yeah, it's just been a wonderful experience. Outside of data, I was a former athlete, and that's a bit of a fun fact about me. And I actually competed at the London 2012 Olympic trials as a triple jumper. So yeah, that's a bit of my sort of claim to fame there.
Thank you. You did a very good introduction. You've made my life easy, Olushola. The interesting thing about Olushola is that for short, he goes by the name Shola.
Yeah.
That's also some simple, nice thing about him. Olushola, would you want to talk us through about the Viz? Angela Davis, what inspired it, and what was the inspiration about it, and what comes to your mind every time you think about that particular Viz?
Absolutely. So, of course, Black History Month stands as the foremost motivation for actually producing that Viz initially. So, I think it was, you know, Feb 2021. I'm always interested in what's going on in the community, and there's a Du Bois challenge going on that looks to, you know, draw attention to notable figures in the Black community, and I wanted to, you know, share my take on that, you know. So I knew I wanted to put something together, so that was a bit of inspiration. But more specifically, I think around that time I just seen a trailer for Judas and the Black Messiah, you know, starring Daniel Kaluuya. I don't know if anyone's seen that film, but Daniel Kaluuya is a British actor. Fun fact, we actually used to go to the same barbershop when we were younger. Yeah, so that's a bit of a fun fact. But he was someone I love watching, and he had been starring in this biographical drama about Fred Hampton, who was an African-American activist during the 1960s. So it kind of like took me down this rabbit hole, you know, and I was curious to like figure out who else is in that sort of space. And I ran into Angela Davis, and I was just hooked on her work from the jump, you know, just to see, you know, what she stood for in relation to social justice, race, gender. She had, you know, talks regarding incarceration system in America. So that was a huge inspiration for me trying to put that Viz together, you know. Yeah. Is it too short? Well, I don't know if is my screen being shared? I'm not too sure.
Your screen is not shared.
All right, is that better? Right, let's pop that in there. Yeah, so again, this is, you know, just a quick snapshot of just the poster for the film. I loved it. If you haven't watched it, I said give it a watch. It's really awesome. Moving a little bit further back, here's a little bit of an action shot there. But if I were to pull up the Viz, I can give you guys a bit of context about surrounding that. Again, it was more born out of curiosity and trying to sort of gain better clarity. I'm not too sure if anyone else sort of has this trouble, but I find it difficult to sort of place historical events on a timeline, right? And I wanted to create something that visually represents Angela's journey, you know, so from start to finish, and what her formative years look like to kind of shape her activism prowess. So over here, I look to, you know, capture data on, like, you know, when did she first break into the scene, around like the 1970s? What years was she prominently active? And is she still active now, you know? So most recently, I think she featured in 2016 documentary. So that was kind of like my thought process of putting this together. I was also interested in what sort of medium she was using to get some of a message across, you know. So you have to bear in mind she was coming from a period where there was no social media, you know. So a lot of her platforms involved, like, you know, interviews, you know, radio interviews again. But again, I just wanted to kind of like build that sort of visual just to make my life easier, but hopefully give a more comprehensive update of her profile and what her journey sort of looked like as well. And over here at the bottom, I've sort of nested it's what I like to call, it's a call to action. So if you fancy learning more about some of the work she's done, there are some books you can read there. So that was collectively the context regarding this sort of Viz.
All right, thank you very much, Shola. Is there any other thing you would like us to know? We have 1 more minute. What was your data process like? And anything you would want to highlight about the Viz? Any more thing?
Not so much about the Viz. I think something that really stood out to me was just how well traveled she was and how wide her reach was. So you have to imagine it's the like 1970s, and you know, in my research, I found out she had, you know, given talks in like Cuba, the Soviet Union, East Germany, and you can imagine, you know, just was during the period of the Cold War. And again, it just speaks to a character that, you know, amidst everything going on in the political climate, she held firm to her values and was willing to, you know, do what it takes to sort of get a message out there, and really amassed a lot of international attention. Yeah, in terms of the data process, I was actually learning Python. Etido could have potentially helped me in a web scraping element here, but I wanted to build a web scraper to help me strip the data down. It didn't quite pan out how I'd imagined, but I was able to, you know, get the data somehow and prepped the data. And it was the first time I've worked with text analysis. So it's like taking something qualitative and trying to quantify it. So that was a bit of a challenge. But again, you know, looking back to the Tableau community, I read a nice little article from Ken Furledge about text analysis. One final piece, I just wanted to give a shout out to Eve Thomas again. She was the inspiration for this Viz. Again, I'm not too sure if you can see my screen, but I loved her design on Madam C.J. Walker here, and she was yeah, really prominent in my decision to sort of create the Angela Davis Viz. So shout out to Eve again on that. But overall, it was an enjoyable project, and you know, I didn't imagine it would get this much traction, but I'm grateful I sort of got it out there. So thank you for allowing me to sort of share that.
Thank you very much, Olusola. We really appreciate you, and I can see the applause are coming from every side. Can you? Thank you so much. I think I'll start with the fun fact about the next presenter. Olusola already mentioned that Eve was a great inspiration in his journey. And guess what? Eve was also a great inspiration to me in my journey too. I'm sure she can remember. But I reached out to her after she published a piece called The Inequality of Childbirth.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, there we go.
Okay, I particularly liked that video and I reached out to her, and we just got talking, and that was really something I loved a lot. Welcome, Eve. Okay, I'm just going to say a bit about Eve. Eve is a data visualization consultant with a background in teaching and HR. So she's transiting. I'm sure everyone who is listening, you can see transitions happening here. The first speaker, Alice, was transiting from, I think, bioscience. She transited into data, and here also a teacher is transiting into data. So you can also make the transition if that appeals to you. People have done it and done it successfully. She's very passionate about education and promoting equal opportunities. Her visualizations are actually designed to create some form of fun and engagement for students, which is, she targets it at students. How do I reach students with something that they can engage with? She's a Tableau Public Ambassador, a featured author with 6 VOTDs. That's amazing. And she's an active member of the community. She also co-leads various community initiatives, one of which is what we're currently in, Data and Diversity, Diversity in Data, Fees to Educate. We're excited to have Eve today as she talks us through the history of notable Black achievements. Over to you, Eve.
Hi guys, I'm going to quickly share my screen. Thank you for the really kind intro. Yeah. So I was looking up idle wells, quite inspired by the first talk there. Where's it gone? Right, hang on. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, we can. Google search.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Okay. I suppose it's the long form Viz, so I have to full screen it. There it is. It's down there. Okay. Okay. So you did a brief intro about me, and you were talking about transition. And you're right. I did do teaching. I did a master's in HR, and then I actually worked in recruitment for a couple of years. So it actually took me a really long time to find data. And when I was working in recruitment, I happened to recruit for the Information Lab. I don't know if you guys have heard of them, but they're quite well known, I think, within kind of the Tableau Public. And as part of their recruitment process, you have to learn Tableau and create a Viz to then present to them as part of your interview. So I started learning Tableau in order to help my applicants to apply to the data school. And then I got to a point where I was thinking, why aren't I applying for this job? This software is really awesome. So that's kind of how I got into my data journey. So that's why I don't come from a data background in terms of education at all. And the Information Lab kind of just train you up from scratch. So if anyone is looking to make that transition in terms of data, there's a few places around that do really support you with that. And the Information Lab was very supportive in my career. So I thought I'd give them a slight shout out there. But yeah, so I don't come from a data background at all. And for me, I think the reason I love Tableau so much is that it allows you to be really creative, right? Like for me, it's just that's where I find my joy with it. And, you know, fun fact about me, in my spare time, I'm creative outside of data and work as well. So you'll find me watercoloring a lot. And I've just started lino carving. If anyone knows what that is, but it's kind of like wood carving, and then you create prints. I find it's a really good way to relieve stress when you're stabbing a piece of lino. So if anyone's looking for some stress relief away from a screen, then I recommend lino cutting. But for me, the joy in Tableau is the creative part for me, and also just discovering something new. So you did mention about the two community initiatives that I help lead. So one is Viz to Educate, which Alice was kind enough to mention earlier, and the other is Diversity in Data. And sometimes they do kind of blend into each other. So the history session that we did for Viz to Educate, we had some amazing visitors come in. I actually did this one with that in mind, as well as diversity in data. And for me, it just combines some of my interests that are really close to my heart. So education is a big one for me, and also highlighting diversity. So I'll go into what inspired me to create this Viz, and then at the end I'm hoping to share a bit about diversity in data as well, just in case anyone else wants to use that data. This data in this Viz particularly is on available there, and other data as well. So why did I create this Viz? I actually started this Viz, and I should actually exit out of this quickly to show you another link. I actually got the inspiration for this Viz when I can't find it. When I first read an article on this website called Black Past, and it was talking about 101 firsts, African American firsts, and I remember just getting really sucked into this article because there was just so many interesting people on it. So if you scroll down, you have like different sections, and it's a really great article actually, because you can click into the individual people, and you can learn more about them and their history. And you know, when you really dive into this, you can see that there are so many people that essentially just changed history. You know, they led that cultural movement, and a lot of them I'd never heard of. So in my mind, I was thinking, well, if I've never heard of it, then I doubt many other people have either. And so that's kind of what inspired me to start building that Viz. I wanted to bring it to people. I wanted them to have access to that. And I felt that Tableau Public was a really good way to do that. So it is a really interesting topic. So I actually took this quote and put it on the Viz, but it's more than just a first. So it's for me, it's like a time and place where you're not just marking the individual achievement. You know, these are kind of first kind of footholds, which marks that it just marks that progression and that cultural change. It's more than just what an individual achievement. It's kind of, you know, these people have achieved this who are really have the odds stacked against them. And I think that that's what really inspired me when I was reading about these achievements. Like some of the history of the individual people, you know, they've really come from, like we heard with Ida, like really difficult, like their younger years, and yet they've managed to achieve just incredible feats. So if you have time to read this article, please do. Really interesting. And for me, I kind of thought, well, actually, there's going to be more than this, because this was just covering African American history. And I thought, well, there must be, like, you know, a much wider scope there. So I ended up creating my own data set, just like Alice mentioned earlier. And I think I managed to compile about 500 different people, and there are going to be a lot more. Let me find my Viz again. There are going to be a lot more, but they were just the ones that I managed to find. Oh, having trouble with the screen share today. Should I keep clicking off a bit? Okay, let me just.
You were seeing your screen.
Can you see the screen? Sorry, for me, it's saying it's not straight. Okay, I think I'm back now. So there we go. So this is the Viz. So first achievement are footholds, as I said before. They're often leading to more widespread and cultural change. So the shorthand for this phrase for this was breaking the colour barrier. And if you go through the Viz, I have tried to split it into sections, and I've also split it between men and women. So there's 497 in here. It goes up to 2021. After that first presentation, I'm determined to add Ida in here somewhere. She's not in there at the moment, but I think judging by what she's achieved, there must be a few places where I can hopefully slot her in. I've got law, religion, sports, social and jobs, military, education and science, politics and arts and entertainment. And something that really stuck out to me when I was doing this was there are a lot more men than women who are in the first achievers. But as you scroll down, you can see that there is an increase as you go to later years there. So it's not quite 50-50, but I think it is improving. So that was something that did stick out to me. One of the main aims for this viz when I created it was I actually want people to go into this, hover over different sections. So let's try, so there we go, there's Madam CJ Walker, found her earlier. So I think quite a few people know about her. She's someone who I think is really inspirational, and Shola did show the viz I did just focused on her. And that viz actually, I did that after creating this one because she was someone that I thought would be really interesting to read more about, and then I decided to actually create a viz about her, a standalone viz. And that's kind of what I wanted people to take from this. I want people to hover over these different points. I wanted to find out about these really interesting people and then go away and research them more. So for me, it's kind of just trying to bring those people to the forefront, get those names out there, and then hopefully inspire people to do more research, learn about these inspirational individuals, and then maybe even build some tableaus as well. And I didn't want to split it between men and women just because I thought there could be an interesting pattern there. To be honest, there's actually more women earlier on than I thought there would be, which I was quite happy about. So you can see here we start in 1778. So 1866, we have the first black women to enlist in the US Army, which it was way earlier than I thought it would be. So I thought that was quite an interesting thing to find as well. You can see that we've got quite, we haven't got many in law. I was trying to find them, but couldn't find a lot, but we do have quite a lot in politics. And I think if you look at Alice's viz and then look at this viz, you'll find there will be a few crossovers there in terms of Congress as well. So yeah, it's quite a simple viz. I'm hoping it, is easy to read and brings across that message. In terms of data prep, I don't know if there's any questions about that, but I know that Alice mentioned it as well. This was one of the first ones that I prepped my own data with, and it does take a long time, all the copying and pasting. So this was all taken from a mixture of sources. I think this was more Kaggle and Wikipedia. So this really was just a case of cutting and pasting each individual cell in Excel, which was painful but worth it. And I mentioned earlier diversity in data. I actually have this exact data source on there. So if you go to diversity in data on Twitter, you'll find our data world link in there, and this data is available for anyone to use. So if you want to use it and build your own version, build it better, please do that, and share it on Twitter, and yeah, try to get more and more people involved. That's the main aim of diversity in data. We want to really highlight these kind of data sets, and these individuals. This is Black History Month as well, so just so you know, we have some current really great data sets on there too. So I think at the moment we have Black inventors. So if you like your history as well, do have a look at that. You might find some really interesting things on there as well. So yeah,
all right.
If anyone has any questions.
Very much. Eve, thank you so much. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Thank you very much. I'm sorry I had to cut you so that we can keep to time. The applause are coming, thumbs up are coming already. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Wonderful Viz. And also thank you for highlighting the role of women in society. Thank you very much. We're gonna go to the last, which is not the least as well. So I'm going to allow me share my screen, and just going to introduce the last, but not the least. Okay, so our last speaker, who is also not our least speaker at the same time, it's our friend and also a Tableau featured author. He's also a Tableau ambassador and a newly nominated Zen master. Allow me to welcome Chimdi Nwosu. I think I'll start by the very fun thing about Chidi first. If you see Chidi's VCs and you see him talking about data, you will never tell he plays the keyboard. But Chimdi also makes melodies with keyboards. So I guess from making melodies with keyboards, he found a way to leverage those functional keys to design very beautiful aesthetics that we call data vizes. He's also very well decorated in the community with loads of VOTDs. He said he's been humbled by Data Farm Community Award and he loves to give back to the community, which is also something that we like about him. Chimdi will talk to us about achievements and inventions of Black inventors. He's also going to be looking at Black inventors, which he submitted to the Diversity in Data Challenge. Chimdi is recognized for leveraging his functional designs and beautiful aesthetics to deliver high quality solutions to clients. He's a data viz manager with Post Media Network Canada. Over to you, Chimdi.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that great introduction, Tito. And also thanks to Tableau for hosting this event to get us going. I'm going to just share my screen here and we can get moving. So. Okay, do you see my screen?
Yeah, we do.
Okay. So is it in presentation mode or can you see like the slides and everything? I'm not really sure what I'm showing right now. Here, let me do something. Sure. Okay, so I think I have it.
So we see the slides.
Okay, perfect. So today I'm just gonna try to make this as quick as possible. I will give a little bit of an introduction about myself, and then I'm gonna talk a little bit about the Viz, and then just give like a quick conclusion. So a little bit about me. I've kind of been using Tableau now for about 3 years. In March next month, I'll be on my 3rd year anniversary. Similar to Shola, I got into this like around like 2020, where COVID kind of kept me inside. Before that, I was essentially using like Excel to do some executive reporting in like the healthcare field. And then I met with a fellow who we kind of collaborated on some Python code for automation at work. And then he mentioned Tableau. And so when I got the opportunity during COVID, I just kind of got into it and I got really hooked on it. I basically took all like the learning paths that were available on the Tableau learning portal, because I find like a person like myself, I need like a structured learning curriculum to help me get into things. So that was how I got into Tableau. And then from there, I started to do Vizes and like I would share with my friends, what do you think about this? And it was like, yeah, you know, it looks good. But there wasn't really that feedback aspect, which I was hoping for, that will help me get better. And so gradually, I just started to do some searches on Tableau Public. And then I ended up on Twitter, got connected with the data fam, started to do like Makeover Mondays, converse with people, Viz review. And then slowly and surely, I started to get more acquainted, became like a Tableau Public Author, and then an ambassador, and then like a visionary recently last Friday, which is like super humbling for me. Like when the announcement came out, I was like, it was a really busy week for me. So I just thought about it over the weekend, and I'm still like, you know, it still hasn't really settled in, but it is definitely exciting. That's what I do know for sure. So, you know, I really appreciate that. As far as what I do for work, as mentioned by Tito, I'm a data viz manager at Post Media Network. So I collaborate with a lot of other data functions in the company, and together we're producing data reporting solutions for, you know, our internal clients to help guide the company's strategy. And then also I do like a bit of side stuff with a bunch of clients, whether it's like actual development work or just consulting and showing methodologies on how I would do things. And that's been really fun for me. So I'm really grateful as well. And then, like I mentioned, for the community, recently became a visionary, 2-time public ambassador, and I co-lead some stuff in the community. So the ongoing Du Bois Challenge, which is just about to end, I co-lead that with a few other awesome guys, Alan Sekou and AJ Starks. Recently got involved with some few tugs, the analytics tugs as well. And so that kind of keeps me busy. And, it's just really a great way, I think, for me at least, to get involved and see what's out there and continue to grow while still giving back to the community. So that's a bit about me. I'm going to switch over now to talk about the main subject here, which is the Viz. And so, just kind of going with like similar questions that have been, talked about by other people. So why did I make this Viz? Eve just spoke about the Diversity in Data Initiative. And so that was actually what prompted me to get into this from the get-go. So this was my contribution for 2021. And of course, it's Black History Month. So this was kind of like a way to celebrate, get involved. And then on a more personal level, I confess, I wasn't really up to speed on like the history of these kinds of things for, the Black people. So I wanted to see like what were the contributions that they had made to society. And when you dig into it, there's actually a lot of cool stuff you get to see. So if I can just like transition to the Viz, I'll just quickly lay out what it's like. Can you see the Viz now, or is it still on the slides?
Still the slides.
Still the slides.
Slides? Okay, 1 second. I'm going to do a new share. See the Viz now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So it's just like a quick Viz where essentially we were provided a bunch of data with a lot of people in there and the different achievements. And so I really wanted to just highlight each and every person inside that data set and what they had done. So out of the 120, I kind of just laid out a quick summary. Some of them are alive, some of them are dead. We talk about, how many fields of occupation, the areas of achievements, and then we have the breakdown of all of those achievements. And then down here, we look at those who, they are part of the data set, but their information is not available. So again, no person is ever going to get unspoken for. And so we put them here in the special section. And then for everyone else, we basically break it down into those who are alive and those who are deceased. So you can sort of hover and see, okay, this is Arlie Peters. Here's what she did. This is when she was born. Is she dead? Is she alive? What is her occupation and what is her contribution? So you can hover through everything and kind of see what those looks like. And let me switch back to the slides. Right. And so, that was kind of the part where, exploring the contributions really was such a meaningful experience for me. And so if you get a chance to check out the Viz, in case you haven't done so, I recently updated it as of 2023. So it should be like recently posted on my profile. Everything seems fairly the same, except for one person who died in 2021 of November, Lee Stiff. So we went from 78 deceased to 79 deceased. And I think I'm just going to keep looking over time to see how those people are faring and then updating the Viz wherever possible. And so why did I choose the title? I chose this so that it's meant to be taken very literally. It literally shows the scientific achievements and inventions of Black inventors. So when you see that, you know exactly what to expect. In terms of the data prep for this Viz, the data was provided through the community challenge, but I just had to do like a little bit of things in Excel. I added in a column that computes the age, and then I had to fill in like the particular year where the Viz is made. So like what would give the today function? I didn't want to do that. I went into manually code it into the data set. And then I also created 2 different columns that helped us separate those two groups of people into those who are alive and who are dead. At the time, which is 2 years ago, that was the best that I can do. And I do admit that going back to update it now, I found certain areas that I can certainly improve and make more automated, more efficient. So I might consider doing that, at some point. Something cool I also want to do here is I said, okay, what are some insights we can take from this? And so I pulled together a little bit of this as of 2023. So the summary, which you already see on the Viz, we've got 120 people there. 79 of them are dead, deceased, 36 are still alive. And then we have those 5 who we are not really sure who they are. And so here we get to see the oldest person out of the data set is James West. He's 92 years old. And then the youngest people are Patachi Valerino and John Dobiri, both tied at 43 years old. So also moving on, for talking about those who are still alive, the median age for those who are alive is 67.5. So like, you know, they're not young people. They've had a lot of time to do a lot of things. And the average age is 67. As far as the areas of achievement, there are 6 of them that we broke them into. The top area was mathematics, which about 41% of people fall into that category. And the next was innovation, 28%. Something cool actually about this fact here, I also have a mathematics degree, so that was kind of cool to see here. Now, I mean, whether or not I was a good student, that's up for debate, but regardless, I think it was still kind of a fun fact that I think, you know, I was happy to share with this biz and the people in it. Now, moving on from this, there's actually something else which is really special to me about this biz, which I would love to share with you. I confess I didn't realize this until I was looking at this recently, but it's actually my first ever visit of the day from the Tableau community. And so that was like, you know, it means a lot more to me now where I've spent some time in there and I know the significance of what this is. But back then I was like, okay, yeah, visit a day, cool, that's fantastic. But regardless, I think it holds a special place for me because of that fact. And, you know, I think I've kind of had a few more after this, but I think this one is always going to remain, you know, close to my heart. And then finally, I'm just going to conclude here. I really enjoyed making the Viz. And like I said, I hope to try to update it from time to time wherever there's an opportunity to do so. If you wanted to chat about this Viz or basically just anything in general, I'd say you can connect with me best on Twitter. All my links are there. You can also add me on LinkedIn with my first and last name. Finally, I would also encourage you, like Eva said before, you have to check out the Diversity in Data initiative on Twitter, participate, get involved. There's a lot of awesome stuff there for you. Got a lot of awesome leaders like Eve, Autumn, Savario, Chimney, like it's all great people. So follow them on Twitter, stay up to date with whatever they have coming. And, you know, I think as always, I say, whatever you get into, just make sure that you're having fun as you Viz, because again, this is like, you know, a really cool.
All right, Chimdi, allow me to say goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I can feel the love already. The applause, the love is a lot.
Thank you.
The thumbs up are coming, so receive them all. We're grateful to you and to every other speaker, Alice, Professor Lee, Eve Thomas, Alisa for organizing this for us, Olushola, we thank you for coming. For every other person, we enjoin you to connect with everyone around, all the speakers, their links have been shared. Connect with them on Twitter, on the Tableau public platform, and engage them. They're very nice people, I must say. If you speak with them, you're going to get feedback, and they're going to help you grow in your own journey. For the recordings of this session, it will be shared with you via email after today. So look out for the email when it comes. We hope you learned a lot about how data and analytics can be used to create a more diverse and equitable future for every one of us. So go out there with your data, speak up about diversity and about inclusivity, and let's make the world a better place. Thank you very much and have a great time.